Welcome to the IEP series on the IEP meeting, preparing, and participating. My name is Jody Jones, and I am a parent consultant at the Utah Parent Center. I am also the mother of children with disabilities. I'm also a licensed foster care provider, and so I get the opportunity to also work with them with their school, their education, and their IEPs when they're needed at times. So to begin with, I'm just going to do a short overview of evaluation and eligibility. The IEP team will have conducted some evaluations with the parents' consent, and upon receiving all the data and information, they will then review it and make a decision based on two primary criteria. Number one, the child needs to have one or more of the identified disability categories and also require the special education services and related services. If the child does do this, then they are eligible for special education. And for more information on the criteria and other workshop presentations, please contact the Utah Parent Center. This is a list of the 13 categories that your child can qualify for. What is special education? Special education is specially designed instruction at no cost to the parents to meet the unique needs of a child with a disability, including instruction that can take place at home, in a hospital, in an institution, or in other settings. And it also includes instruction in physical education. There's also related services, and related services can include like speech and language pathology, interpretation, psychology, nursing services. There's several areas, and transportation and such developmental, corrective, or other supportive services that are required to assist the child with a disability to benefit from special education is when those related services can come into place. So after we look at the assessment and the needs of the child, then we put all the information together, and they use what's called present level of academic performance, and from there they develop IEP goals. So we are going to talk about developing the IEP now. Do you guys know what IEP stands for? What's an IEP? Linda?
Individualized Education Plan.
It is. And it's also said an individualized education program. But when we get talking about it a lot of times with our team, we do call it a plan because it's a written plan. So, and it is developed and reviewed and revised in a team meeting. Some of the key elements of our individualized education program is that it guides the child's education, which is really important. We want to know where our child is going, where they are, where they're going to, the goals that they're going to be achieving. It helps determine the placement. There are several classrooms, and we can talk about the least restrictive environment a little bit later, but there's several areas or classrooms that a child can be placed in. It's written in a team meeting, and the team meeting does include the parents. And if there is an IEP that's already been made, it needs to be in effect at the beginning of each school year. For initial IEPs, a meeting to develop the IEP needs to be held within 30 days of determining that the child qualifies and is in need of special education. Now, sometimes you might hear the word IFSP instead of an IEP. Are you guys familiar with that? A little bit? If you had children that needed services from birth to their 3rd birthday, they will have possibly had an IFSP. Here's a little chart showing the difference between the two. An IFSP is an individualized family service plan, as opposed to your IEP, which is your individual education program. Here are some more key issues about your individualized education program. Before the services can be provided, it needs to be in effect. So the parents need to have signed, the meeting took place, and it needs to be implemented as soon as possible following the meeting. It needs to be accessible to the regular ed and the special education teachers and all others responsible for servicing that child. That's really important because if your regular ed teacher doesn't have the goals or doesn't understand your child's needs, then they can't be met. one key part to this is when your child gets into like junior high and high school, you know, they have multiple teachers. So it's really important for the parents to take that IEP themselves even and get copies made and go ahead and give them to the teachers and ask them if they have any questions, because at your IEP team meeting, a lot of times every general ed teacher won't be able to attend. One is only required. And then the teachers and providers need to know their responsibilities that are in the IEP and any accommodations and modifications that need to be provided to that student. This is a cute little cue card, and it is preparing for the IEP meeting. These are important parent tips that are great for you to use. Number one, try to keep a file of all the important papers, and that would include assessments and evaluations that they give you. That would include copies of your child's IEP. Also, you can always ask to review the existing data. Know who will be attending the meeting. It's nice to know ahead of time so that you don't feel overwhelmed or caught off guard with people that might be at the meeting. And if you have information that would be helpful to the teachers or the team, make sure you bring it with you. If you've done independent doctor's evaluations or doctor's reports or any of that, please bring it. They definitely will look at it and consider it to help write your child's IEP. Write down your questions ahead of time. I love doing this. I always have lists and notes with me when I go to the doctor or anywhere I go. It's great to have those questions written down ahead of time. And also write down your priorities. Know what it is you want for your child. One other thing that is great to do is to bring a picture of your child and kind of talk for a minute about your child and say, this is my child, this is what they like to do, or have your child there and help them talk to the team themselves and let them say, this is what I like to do, these are my goals. And then if you cannot make the meeting time, please let somebody know, because the meeting time for the IEP can definitely be renegotiated and rescheduled. It's important for you as the parent to be there because you have an important role. You're definitely part of the team and you have a lot of information and input that's important to them. So, what is a team partner? Who participates in the IEP? Do you guys know? I've given you some hints. Tell me who you think would be part of the IEP team.
Parents.
Absolutely. Parents are essential.
The student, if they're old enough.
The student, if they're old enough. That's great. And sometimes even a younger student can come, even for maybe the first 5 minutes, to say hi to everybody and, you know, let them really get a feel for this is a real child and a real person that we are, you know, developing goals for. Who else might be an essential part?
An LEA?
LEA. Can you tell us what an LEA is?
Yes, it's actually somebody who's like the principal, the vice principal, or somebody from the district who can allocate funds.
Right.
Know the general curriculum, and they're over special education.
That's perfect. Perfect. Thank you. So they know the services, they know what monies are there, and they kind of can govern the meeting a little bit. Good. So other people would be a regular ed teacher with a minimum of 1 attending, a special ed teacher, and another key person is somebody who can interpret the results of the evaluations that have been done. For instance, if the child psychologist has done some evaluations on your child, it's really important for that child psychologist or somebody else who is capable and able of interpreting those results, because it would be a little confusing at the meeting to have them say, well, your child has a low IQ, but not be able to tell you why, or you know what the information was based on. So members of the team, there are a couple important bits of information that you will want to know with this. Attendance is not necessary for instance, the speech teacher to be there if their part is not being discussed or revised, and if the parent has given consent and the team agrees ahead of time and in writing. Another team member can also be excused if they get the parents' consent, again, ahead of time in writing, and if they have submitted in writing their piece that would be important to that child's IEP. So a revision of goals or data on how the child is progressing and information that the parent or family or team might need to know. IEP Development. Some really important things when you sit down to develop the IEP, remember to consider the child's strengths. You know, we want to always look at the child for their abilities, not just their disabilities. So consider the child's strengths. Always make sure as a parent that you are expressing any concerns that you might have. You know, feel free to talk about anything that you think the child might be afraid of or may not be able to successfully complete, because there's ways that you can work together as a team to brainstorm ideas. Also, the accommodations and modifications can be put into place. Make sure that the results of the initial or most recent evaluation are part of the development of the IEP, and make sure that you're looking at the academic, developmental, and functional needs of the child. Here are some great IEP parent need-to-knows. To the extent appropriate, the regular education teacher should be helping to develop the IEP. Why do you think that's important to have the regular ed teacher help develop the IEP? Why, Ashley?
I think it'd be important to see if they can implement those plans into their curriculum, into the classroom, to see if it will work.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. Okay, and parent and the school may agree that after the first annual IEP meeting, to amend or modify the IEP without having another meeting that school year. And reevaluations and IEP team meetings may be held at the same time. The IEP may be changed in a meeting or without a meeting and just be amended. They can write it and add amendment pages to the IEP if the parent and the team has agreed to that. And then the parent can ask for those amended pages. For example, my son started junior high, and I felt like it was not appropriate for him to have to shower. And also they required a combination lock, and I thought that he probably wasn't going to be able to remember the combination to a school locker and a gym locker and an art locker. So we went ahead and I requested that we write a small amendment to the IEP stating that Kyle would be allowed to, 1, not shower, and 2, that he could have a key locking lock for the other lockers, and then we just took an extra key to the school. So that was a great way to be able to add to his IEP without calling a whole meeting and having everybody need to be there and match up schedules and times. As far as educational placements, parents are members of any group that makes decisions on placement. And there's alternate ways to meet. Do you guys know some alternate ways to meet? What if they plan the meeting and you need to be out of town, but it's really important to have that meeting? Rebecca?
A conference call?
A conference call, that is fantastic. What else?
Could you do it by email or?
You could if you agreed to it, or by video, absolutely. So just know that there's other options. If you're not able to attend that meeting, but you feel it's important that it take place at that time, go ahead and propose some other ideas to get that meeting done. Now we're going to talk about the actual Individualized Education Program, or your IEP. There are some very specific components that need to be part of this to make the IEP work and to be following Utah State Office of Education rules and regulations. So the number one area that we're going to talk about is the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. And you may hear this called the PLAFA. It's a mouthful. Make sure that you include how the disability affects the involvement and the progress in the general ed curriculum. Those are important to have in there so that other people reading the IEP can understand where the goals are coming from and where your child currently is. For preschool age children, it needs to talk about how the disability affects participation in appropriate activities. Number 2, there should be benchmarks or short-term objectives for children taking alternative assessments. Have you guys heard of the alternative assessments? Do you know the name of the alternative assessment, Rebecca?
The UA?
The UA, yeah. The Utah Alternative Assessment. And so if your child is taking that assessment, make sure that you have some short-term objectives or benchmarks in your IEP that can be met. The next one is that it has measurable annual goals, including academic and functional goals to meet, 1, the needs of the child, so that they can be involved and make progress in the general ed curriculum. And 2, other educational needs that result from the disability. Number 4, we want to make sure it has the information about how progress will be measured and when the reports of progress will be issued. What do you guys feel like would be appropriate if you have a child with an IEP in special education? How often would you want to receive the reports, and what do you think would be appropriate for that? Linda?
I'd at least want to hear every report card, period, when I get the report cards on my children.
Good, good. So at least as often as typical children are getting, or at least as often as you're getting from the general ed teacher as far as report cards. Good. And then those reports can be varied. You know, you can talk to the teacher about if you need a little more information or if you feel what they're doing is great. I know with my child's report, she usually graphs things, so we have a really good idea about, you know, when she puts a date timeline with the graph, and so we know, you know, days maybe that Callie was having better days or worse days, and that's great. I love it. It really helps me to understand. Number 5 is the special education and related services and other supports and services to the child. We want to make sure that the goals are written in a way that they can advance toward their annual goals, and that progress in the general curriculum is being made, that participation in extracurricular and non-academic activities are within their reach, that they're able to access those, and that they would be educated and participate with all children, including non-disabled children. Number 6, we want to make sure that there is written in there the extent that the child will not participate with non-disabled peers in the regular ed classroom or activities. So if your child is going to be in the special ed classroom for the first hour of each morning to do maybe their math or their writing, then we want it written in the IEP stating that, you know, 1 hour each morning the child will not be with their peers, that they will be in the special ed classroom. And number 7, any individual accommodations needing to measure academic achievement and functional performance on the state and district-wide assessments. If the IEP team determines that an alternate assessment is needed for your child, they need to include a statement of why it's needed, why the child cannot take the regular assessment, and the alternate assessment is appropriate. They need to state that it is appropriate and why your child cannot take the regular ed assessment. And number 8, make sure that there's dates that the services and modifications are going to begin. Have on there the frequency, the location, and the duration. It helps parents be able to follow along when that information is on there too. So we're going to talk about some examples of IEP goals. Do you guys have an example of a good or a bad IEP goal? Well, let's go with bad first. Do you guys have an example? Let me give you one. Oh, do you have one? Okay, Ashley.
Okay, this is one I kind of thought of. Like, Johnny will finish his schoolwork 80% of the time.
Good. That is a fantastic, not good goal. Johnny will finish his schoolwork 80% of the time. Why do you think that would be a hard goal to achieve? Do you guys have any ideas?
Well, I think 80% isn't a very good measurable tool. How do you know what 80% is in terms of that homework?
Absolutely. And 80% of which schoolwork? Does that include art projects or, you know, all of that? So that's fantastic. We have a couple on here, and I'll just tell you one because Ashley already gave us one. Jenny will stay on task 90% of the time, 90% accuracy. Do you guys stay on task 90% of the time? I'm probably not on task 90% of the time. 1, it's not a good measurable goal, and 2, it's probably not a realistic goal. Like, so you're going to have poor Jenny sitting there at attention 90% of the day while her friends are talking or getting a drink or, you know, transitioning to the next subject. So what about a good measurable goal? Do you guys have a good measurable goal, or would you like me to give you an example?
Give us an example.
Okay. By May 15th, Sarah will orally read 7th grade material at 75 to 100 words per minute with 0 to 2 errors. Does that sound like something that you'd actually be able to monitor and collect data on, and it goes towards a good end result? More examples of goals can also be found in our Parents as Partners in the IEP Process Handbook, and that's available through the Utah Parent Center. So once you have got together with your team and written some goals with your team based on your child's needs, here are some good questions to consider just as a follow-up and to make sure you feel like the IEP is appropriate for your child. 1, are the IEP goals measurable? 2, is my child in the regular education environment all or part of the day? Why or why not? Know where your child's going to be. Are they going to be 50% in each? One good thing about that is if you ever have to show up to the school to get your child, you're not looking all over and wondering where they are. You know that they're in the right place at the right time. 3, does the IEP list modifications, accommodations, and supports, including for the state and district-wide test accommodations? Those need to be in there. I did get a panicked note from our special ed teacher because we had forgot to list the accommodations that would go with her assessing or taking the assessments. And so we went ahead and again just did an addendum to the IEP and added that she was allowed to have breaks and some treats and some other things that were appropriate to help her make it through the assessment. 4, is the school expecting the kind of progress that I believe my child should make? Let's not hold our children small. Make them reach, grow, strive. That's how we all grow, and they're very capable of doing the same thing. 5, is transportation a needed related service? You should know that that is a related service that you can access if it's needed for your child to receive their free and appropriate education and special education. 6, is my child expected and able to meet graduation requirements? Now you may want to look at that as they get a little bit older, closer to junior high, the end of junior high maybe even. But it is something definitely to look at and think about. And then last, when will the IEP be reviewed? Know how soon that's coming up. Besides, then you can get your new list of questions ready to go. Here are a couple other things to consider looking at to see if your child might need them. Assistive technology, and let's talk about assistive technology. The device would be any piece of equipment or product system used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capacities and capabilities of a child. So then we have the word service under assistive technology. And a service would be any service that directly assists a child with selecting, acquiring, or using assistive technology device. And the term can include evaluation, providing equipment, maintaining, customizing, or replacing the equipment, coordinating other therapies with assistive technology, training and technical assistance for the child, families, or others involved in a major life function of the child. The one exception to this would be any surgically implanted device like a cochlear implant. That is not covered under this. The school has no obligation to get your child any device that would be surgically implanted or to have to replace it should there be a problem. Extended school year may be an option that you and the team may want to consider if your child has regresses easily or if they're just not quite making their goals, then extended school year might be an option. Extended school year is special education and related services that go beyond the normal school year in accordance with the IEP and at no cost to parents. It must be provided if services are necessary to ensure the provision of FAPE, which is your free and appropriate education, and services met state standards, not limited to categories of the disability or automatic limited time durations, and if it is in the IEP as the team determines it necessary. Next, we're going to talk about placement. Placement of your child is a very important part of their education. If they're not placed where they can be successful or happy, or if it's too overwhelming, or if it doesn't challenge them enough, they may not be able to grow to their full potential. So the guidelines state that we want to place the child in their least restrictive environment, and the definition of that would be to the maximum extent appropriate. Children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled. Supplementary services are to be provided in conjunction with regular classroom placement. So the placement part of this is, one, made by a group of persons, including the parents, so your IEP team. Two, that it's in conformity with your LRE, your least restrictive environment. Three, that it's determined annually, so go ahead and look at it each year as you review your IEP to make sure that the placement is still appropriate. Four, that it's based on the IEP. And five, that it's as close to home as possible. The continuum of alternative placements must include, and now let me explain what that means. So when you're looking at the appropriate placement for your child, it can start with the regular ed classroom, and then maybe the next appropriate thing to look at would be special classes, special schools, home instruction, and instruction in hospitals and institutions. And placement in the school also can be that they're in the general ed class for like 90% of the day with just a small amount of pull-out services, all the way up to being in like a self-contained classroom. So it's a good thing to ask your team what the continuum is and what they're looking at for your child. And then make sure you have, that you participate in that. Positive behavior interventions. Positive behavior interventions. What's positive? Can you guys give me a definition of positive as far as behavior? Like if your child was behaving positively, what kind of behaviors would you be seeing?
Staying on task and working in the classroom.
Good, good. Anything else? Maybe not acting out very much, or positive would be characterized by displaying approval, acceptance, or affirmation behaviors. And then the behavior would be the manner of conducting oneself. It's also something an organism does in response to its environment. So it's important to know that our children also may react and behave in response to their environment. And the intervention is to enter a course of events so as to hinder or change it. So if we're getting behaviors that we're not liking or wanting, or we feel like our children are capable of more, we want to go ahead and put some interventions in place. All right, if you have concerns with behaviors that your child might be manifesting in the school or showing, or the way that they're reacting and acting to things in school, there is an incredible assessment that the school staff can do for your child. It's called a functional behavioral assessment. And the functional behavioral assessment looks at the behavior of your child and why they do it and when they do it, and if there's something leading up to this behavior, so that they can then take all that information and put it together in a plan to help your child. The functional behavioral assessment would be a guide that would help drive the decision making on what to do to help your child. It would lead to strategies that help meet the child's needs. It's required when a child has been removed from their educational program for more than 10 days, and it also should be considered in any evaluation when behavior is a concern. So after they've done the functional behavioral assessment, they can put together what's called a behavioral intervention plan. In the behavioral intervention plan, we want some good, positive behavioral interventions. Do you guys have an idea of what some good, positive behavioral interventions might be? Rebecca?
A token reward system.
A token reward system, that works for a lot of kids, absolutely. Then they know when they're doing things right and good and on task. What else? Linda?
Sometimes just going up to the student and patting them on the shoulder.
Absolutely. A pat on the shoulder, sometimes a high five, or a special handshake, or some of those things are great. So positive is going to be characterized by displaying approval, acceptance, or an affirmation to the child's behavior. We want them to know when they're on the right track, and we want it to be something that they are starting to crave, the positive reinforcements, rather than having to act out to get negative reinforcements. And then the behavior is the manner of conducting oneself. So it's something an organism does in response to its environment. So we're going to look at the behavior of the child, and sometimes we can even head off their negative behaviors if we're paying attention to that child, and so we can look for the signs that something's coming. And a lot of times a positive intervention or a little high five or a, hey, you're doing great today, can head off their negative behavior. And of course, an intervention would be to enter a course of events to hinder or change maybe the upcoming negative behavior. In the case of a child whose behavior impedes his or her learning or that of others, consider, when appropriate, strategies, including positive behavioral interventions, supports to address that behavior. So if you're finding that you're getting lots of phone calls from the teacher saying, you know, I'm having a hard time teaching, or can you give me some ideas that your child might respond better to, it's okay to go ahead and ask the school, and I always recommend that you do it in writing, to request that they conduct a functional behavioral assessment on your child, and then they can write what's called the behavioral intervention plan. The behavioral intervention plan should be in writing. It should be team developed. It should use strategies to strengthen appropriate behaviors. A lot of times it's also good to have a crisis intervention plan. Some kids can escalate pretty high, and so if you have a crisis intervention plan, it's a great tool for the teachers to have, for the principal to have, and a lot of times families can carry over that crisis intervention plan to their own home so that the child is getting the same type of rewards and interventions in both environments so that it's consistent. Yes, Ashley?
Is that crisis intervention plan in that behavioral plan, are they the same thing? So
Yes.
they'll be at the same time?
Yeah, well, it'll just be part of the plan. So, for instance, let's say that when you get to school every day, your child has meltdowns. The principal could even have in their hand like a little treat or a token that they could deposit in their token reward system as soon as they make it into the class. The other part of that would be, what if the child continues to escalate or meltdown? Then that's when your crisis plan would come into place. You know, does the principal or does somebody have permission to kindly pick up your child and remove them so they're not hurting themselves or others? Or do we just get another teacher and we just stand around them so that they're not, you know, we can intervene if something more is starting to escalate? So we're going to have a plan that talks about some pre-steps, some precursor things that we can do to help prevent it, and then the crisis intervention plan will talk about, if we get to that level, what are the steps we need to take now to help de-escalate or remove the child from the situation so that we can go on with the day. Does that help? Okay. We definitely want the general educator to have input again. So your child's regular ed teacher, it's great to have as part of the input, and to have modifications in the curriculum or the classroom expectations if needed. Maybe the child can't go to circle time or, you know, reading time the second that the kindergarten teacher needs them to. Maybe they need to transition over in 2 or 3 minutes because they can't handle the stress of walking over with all the kids. So that would be a great modification or accommodation actually to put in. If there's a safe school violation, the team needs to hold a manifestation determination review. And that is where they will look at the behavior that the child manifested or showed, and they will compare it to the child's disability. So they can say, the behavior that this child had, is it specifically related to their disability? For instance, if they, are nonverbal or lower functioning and they don't understand that a toy gun or their little brother's water gun would be a safe school violation because you can have no object even looking like a gun on school property, did that violation relate to their disability because they simply didn't understand and it was an accident? This review is to determine the relationship and whether we need to have a disciplinary action or not. If the team decides that the behavior was a manifestation of the student's disability, then the school must conduct a functional behavioral assessment, which is what we were just talking about, if one has not already been done, and then implement the behavior intervention plan or review the existing one. And they also need to return the child to his or her previous placement unless there are special circumstances or if there was a change in placement agreed to by the team. Transition is an important part of your child's IEP, and that comes into place no later than their 16th birthday. The Utah Parent Center has put together a series of transition workshops, a lot like these IEP ones, and so for more information, please refer to those. So I'm just only going to give you a brief overview to help you with the IEP part of transition in a mini scope. For transition, we have members of your IEP team, and they're going to be a lot like the same members that are part of just your regular IEP team. But the transition team needs to invite the child. When your child is old enough that they're looking at transition, they must be invited to that IEP team meeting. They need to be able to have their input and say what are their likes or what are their goals, and then the team must consider those as part of the IEP team meeting. If the child does not attend, the school must ensure that his or her preferences and interests are considered in the planning. And where appropriate, the school must invite participating agencies that are likely to provide or pay for transition services. When other agencies are invited, the parent and student need to be informed of that and give their consent. So the members of the team meeting that we want to make sure they are attending would be the student, the parents, special education teacher, the regular education teacher, the local education agency representative, the LRE, and related service providers and other adult service providers. When you get to the point where your child is going to transition into adulthood, it's a great time to start looking broader as to what jobs they might be able to have or who can support them with that. Are they going to live with you? Can they live independently? Do they know how to take the bus and get around? So that's why these are key players that are important to have as part of your transition IEP meeting. Let's talk about the transition timeline. It needs to begin no later than the first IEP that will be in effect when the child turns 16. It can start earlier if it's appropriate, and it needs to be updated annually. What is the age of majority? Do you guys know what the age of majority is? Yes, Rebecca?
18, isn't it?
18 is the age of majority. Why is that important when we're talking about IEPs and team meetings and transition? What happens when you turn 18?
You become an adult. Doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. All those rights and privileges transfer right over to you.
That's right, and that is really important for parents to know. Sometimes when you have a child that is very low functioning and very dependent on you, you're not necessarily thinking that at 18, all the rights and decision-making powers then go to that child. So there are some safeguards to help parents key into that before it's too late. The transition team needs to let you know that the rights will transfer to the student at age 18 unless guardianship has been awarded, and that any notice required by IDEA must be provided to both the parent and the student, so both the parent and the student are aware of the changes that will happen at 18. The statement must be included in the IEP not later than 1 year before the student's birthday. So by the time before the child turns 17 or at the IEP of their 17th birthday, it needs to state to you, the parent, and to the child that all rights will then become that of the child at 18. The purpose of the transition IEP meeting should be to determine the needs of the student. Does that sound familiar? Did we look at that already with their regular IEP too? So we always are looking at the needs of the student. To target the services that are available, like Linda said, she did a great job targeting services and agencies that might be helpful to her son. To develop a formal transition plan and to monitor the progress of the student, and to provide information and training for the parents. When the transition goals are being written and listed on the IEP, they should be based on the academic subjects, the child's skills, their daily living skills, and the needs, including interests and preferences of your child. That is the whole idea of the transition IEP, is so that it is a good, solid foundation to carry your child through into adulthood. And the activities that can also go along, or the goals that go along with the transition IEP, would be further education and vocational training, especially if there's training for a specific job that your child might be interested in. Getting and keeping a job, is that important?
Yes.
I mean, we love our kids, but at some point we'd like it if they can move on, and keeping a job might be an important piece of that. Living independently, and community activities. So we have some agency linkages that could be helpful. We want to identify any transition service providers that are likely to help assist or pay or provide information or support to the child. We need to always obtain the parent and student consent, like we talked about, before they come to the meeting. And if you're doing your IEP meeting, and let's say your child is just 16, and you feel like it's not needed or not yet appropriate to look at for your child, then you can check not needed. Please know that if you feel like that's a concern, you can write in the anecdotal notes that parents request that we re-look at this in a year or as needed, and that may alleviate some of your concerns with checking the not needed. Additional information is to make sure that they have appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals that are based on the age-appropriate transition, assessments related to the post-secondary training or education, and post-secondary employment, as well as independent living skills where appropriate, and transition services including course of study designed to help the student reach the post-secondary goals. So do we have some continuing education that might be good for them, or would there be some college classes that would be good for them to achieve those goals? Another great piece to the transition IEP is called a summary of performance. I loved having this when my daughter graduated high school. My district actually called it an exit summary of performance. And what it is a list of what your child has accomplished, what their goals are, if they've taken any adult transition evaluations, then it's a summary of maybe the skills that they have or the skills they want to acquire. It's fantastic. So this summary of performance must contain a summary of their academic achievement and functional performance, and you've heard that a few times now, so it's important to have in all your IEPs, and recommendations on how to assist the student in meeting their post-secondary goals. It is required for students who exit the school system through either graduation or through the diploma, or by reaching the maximum age. And for more information on this, again, please refer to our transition series or our workshop that we do through the Utah Parent Center. So we are to the point where the IEP has been developed based on evaluation, based on team decisions, and written based on the needs of the child, and implemented, and we've talked about transition. So you're done, right? Yay! No, we have to do some follow-up. We want to make sure as parents that things are happening and that our children are headed on the right track and being able to meet the goals that have been laid out for them. Please remember that the IEP is not etched in stone. It is not a permanent carved document that is unable to change. An IEP can be changed, and as a parent, you have a right to call an IEP team meeting if you feel like it's appropriate and needed. Or, better than that, you always have the right to go in and talk to the school, to the teachers, to the service providers, and just tell them your concerns and questions. And if it's too big, just to handle right then you guys can decide to call a team meeting. Monitoring and following up on your IEP. Remember that you need to receive regular reports Monitor your child's progress. You know, feel free to shoot an email that says, how's my child doing? Or I got this report and I don't quite understand it. Which leads me to the next one. Stay in communication with your school. And there's several ways to do that. You can send emails, which teachers actually really love right now because they can check it, you know, in between kids' reading time or when they're with a specialist. Their parents aren't showing up and interrupting the class. Another way that I have done for years with my children, I just take a spiral-bound notebook and we just send it back and forth because then the teachers can write little comments or this is what your child did today or tomorrow's our field trip, don't forget to send a lunch, you know, any information like that. And then I can send information back. And it's dated, it's written, I can refer back to it and go, oh yeah, we did this, or, you know, Kyle needed this. And then anticipate that the IEP is going to be reviewed yearly as a minimum, so that you can be ready for that. So you can, you know, have your questions and your notes ahead of time. You can make a difference. Our children are an important part of our lives, and we are an important part of their lives. You are absolutely a member of your child's IEP team. As John F. Kennedy said, some men see things as they really are and say, why? I dream of things that never were and say, why not?